The apex station hung like a gleaming metal flower in the void, its petals unfurled in concentric rings around a central hub. From afar, it looked harmonious, each section flowing seamlessly into the next, a triumph of interspecies cooperation and engineering. Up close, the reality was more complicated. Elena Rostova's boots made a rhythmic clicking sound against the worn metal floors of each section as she made her way through the crowded corridors. The human quarter was a maze of narrow passages, repurposed shipping containers, and jury-rigged living spaces, all packed together with the efficiency that only humans seemed capable of achieving when pressed for resources. Morning coordinator called a vendor selling something that approximated coffee. Elena nodded back with a tired smile. Not her official title, of course. The Cathar consortium that governed Apex Station would never grant a human such formal authority. But among her own people, the title had stuck. She passed a group of children playing an improvised game with a ball made of wrapped polymer fibers, their laughter echoing against the metal walls. Despite the constant low-grade hum of ancient air scrubbers and the slightly stale smell that permeated the place, each section was vibrant. Music drifted from personal quarters, mingling with the sound of conversation in a dozen Earth languages. Shops operated out of converted storage units, selling everything from repair services to handcrafted goods. Humans had built a community here, despite it all, or perhaps because of it. Elena stopped at a viewport, looking out at the gleaming, crystalline structures of the Cathar district in the central hub, its elegant spires and pristine environmental systems a stark contrast to the utilitarian patchwork of each section. 10 years ago, when she'd first arrived, discharged from Earth's orbital defense forces with engineering skills and a pragmatic outlook, she believed that patience and compliance would eventually earn humans their place at the table. Now, at 42, lines forming at the corners of her eyes and her dark hair streaked with premature gray, she was less certain. Her comm unit buzzed. The screen displayed a formal reminder about her meeting with Station Administrator Lorvis, representative of the Cathar Consortium and effectively the highest authority on Apex. She'd been waiting 3 months for this appointment. 3 months of filing requests, navigating bureaucratic mazes, and politely insisting on the promised upgrades to H section's environmental systems. Elena straightened her jacket, her one concession to formality, and headed toward the transit hub. Time to play nice. Again, the administrative sector of Apex Station was a study in controlled intimidation. High ceilings, vast, empty spaces, materials that seemed to absorb sound, creating an unnatural stillness. Everything designed to make a visitor, particularly a human visitor, feel small and inconsequential. Administrator Lorvis did not rise when Elena was finally admitted to his office after an hour of waiting. The tall, mantis-like Cathar continued studying something on his holoscreen, his 4 upper limbs moving in precise patterns while his 2 lower limbs remained still beneath his ornate desk. Human Representative Rostova, he said eventually, compound eyes shifting in her direction. You are here about the environmental upgrades to your section, I believe. Elena maintained her neutral expression, though her jaw tightened slightly. Yes, Administrator. As per our agreement in the last quarter's resource allocation meeting, the upgrade materials were scheduled for delivery 3 weeks ago. Indeed, Lorvis's mandibles clicked softly, a sound that Elena had learned to interpret as mild displeasure. However, there have been competing priorities. The deuterium processing facility required unexpected maintenance, and, with respect, Administrator, Elena interjected, earning a slight twitch of Lorvis's antennae. This is the 4th rescheduling. Our current air filtration system is operating at 62% efficiency, well below the station's safety standards for any other section. We've had 3 respiratory incidents among our elderly population just this week. Your species' remarkable adaptability to suboptimal conditions is well documented. Lorvis responded, voice cool. It is one of the more useful traits of Deathworlders. Elena let the slur pass. Deathworlders was technically a classification. Humans came from a planet with higher gravity, more extreme weather patterns, and a broader range of pathogens than most spacefaring species. But the way certain species used it, particularly the Cthar, made it clear it was not intended as a compliment. Nevertheless, she pressed on. The agreement was made. Our section has fulfilled all its obligations. Maintenance of the lower engineering sectors, staffing the waste reclamation facilities, providing security services for the outer docks. Services that keep this station running. There was a barely perceptible pause before Lorvis responded. I acknowledge your sections. Contributions. He made a gesture with one limb, and a document appeared on the small holoscreen in front of Elena. Here is the revised delivery schedule. The first components should arrive within 2 weeks, with installation to follow. Elena scanned the document, her heart sinking. The timeline had been extended again, with the full upgrade now projected to take nearly 6 months. But she nodded, keeping her face expressionless. Thank you, Administrator. We look forward to the improvements. Lorvis had already turned his attention back to his original task. That will be all, Representative. Elena left the administrative sector with her fists clenched tight enough to leave crescent marks on her palms. More promises, more delays, more of the same. So, let me guess, a voice called out as she re-entered H section. They're deeply concerned about our situation, and they'll get to it right after they polish every single one of their fancy crystals up in Case section. Jax leaned against a corridor wall, arms crossed over his chest. At 25, he was tall and wiry, with quick movements and quicker words. His dark skin was smudged with engine grease, and his closely cropped hair was hidden under a bandana made from an old circuit diagram printout. His trademark is H section's most talented and most hot-headed mechanic. Not now, Jax, Elena muttered, walking past him. He fell on his step beside her. No, seriously, what's the excuse this time? Fluctuations in the quantum field? Spiritual alignment of the galactic core? The Cthar meditation month? Deuterium processor maintenance, Elena replied flatly. Jax barked a laugh. That's a new one. The processors that I personally rebuilt last month and certified for another year of operation without major maintenance. Apparently, they had an unexpected issue. Yeah, it's called lying. Jax's voice rose, drawing glances from passers-by. When are we going to stop playing this game, Elena? When are we going to stop pretending they're ever going to treat us as equals? Elena stopped abruptly, turned to face him. And what would you suggest? A revolt? With what weapons? Against what targets? We're outnumbered, outgunned, and living in a pressurized can in space. So please, enlighten me about how we should stop playing nice. Jax didn't back down. I'm not saying violence. I'm saying leverage. They need us more than they admit. Half the critical systems on this station wouldn't function without human maintenance crews. The waste processing would collapse in a week. The computer systems in the cargo bays would fail in a month. And they'd replace us within a year, at most, Elena countered. There are other species they could bring in. Not at our cost efficiency. Not with our adaptation rate. Jax pressed. We just need to show them what happens when Deathworlders stop being convenient servants. Elena sighed, feeling the weight of leadership pressing down on her. I get it, Jax. I do. But we've built something here. Families. A community. I won't put that at risk without exhausting every other option. She placed a hand on his shoulder. 2 more weeks. They've promised the first components in 2 weeks. Jax shook his head, but didn't argue further. Fine. 2 weeks. But I'm not the only one getting tired of broken promises. He wasn't wrong about that. As Elena continued through H section, she noted the signs of strain, the makeshift medical station overflowing, the increasing number of people wearing filter masks, the tension in conversations. The environmental issues were taking their toll. Her comm unit pinged with a message from Dr. Eris Thorne, requesting a meeting. Elena redirected her path toward the small laboratory the elderly xenobiologist maintained in the quieter part of H section. Dr. Thorne had been on Apex Station longer than any other human, nearly 30 years. His hair was completely white now, his tall frame slightly stooped, but his blue eyes remained sharp behind old-fashioned glasses. His lab was cluttered with specimens, data tablets, and handwritten notes, a chaotic archive of his studies on interspecies communication and biology. "You look like you've had another productive meeting with our esteemed administrator," he observed as Elena entered. She dropped into a chair across from his workbench. "That obvious? You have what I call the diplomatic scowl, a particular expression that forms after suppressing one's actual thoughts for an extended period." He pushed a cup of real tea, one of his few luxuries, toward her. "I take it the environmental upgrades are delayed again. 2 more weeks for the first components, whatever that means." Elena took a grateful sip of the tea. "Jax is getting restless. Others too." Dr. Thorne nodded thoughtfully. "The younger generation lacks our experience with patients. Can't say I blame them." He shuffled some papers. "I've been monitoring the health reports. Respiratory complaints up 32% from last quarter. Nothing life-threatening yet, but concerning." "I know, but what else can we do?" Elena asked, genuinely seeking his counsel. Despite his mild manner, Thorne had been a voice of wisdom in the community since before her arrival. "For now, continue as you have been." "But," he hesitated, "it might be prudent to prepare contingencies. The Cathar value stability and predictability above all. They don't respond well to direct confrontation, but they are extremely uncomfortable with uncertainty." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting we become unpredictable?" "I'm suggesting we be prepared to become unpredictable, should circumstances require it." The old scientist smiled slightly. "In any case, that wasn't why I called you here. I wanted to show you something." He activated a small hollow projector on his desk, displaying what appeared to be complex mathematical equations. "My research team has been working on chaos-based mathematical models for cross-species communication. Fascinating implications for understanding how different neural architectures process information." Elena nodded politely, though she wasn't sure why this required her immediate attention. "The practical application is still theoretical," Dr. Thorne continued, "but it suggests possibilities for creating communication signals that could bypass traditional processing systems, essentially speaking directly to the pattern recognition centers of any brain." He deactivated the projection. "Might be useful someday." Elena understood the subtext. Thorne rarely shared his research without reason. He was giving her information he thought might be valuable in the future. Filing it away mentally, she finished her tea and stood. "Thank you, Doctor, for the tea and the conversation. Anytime, my dear." He turned back to his work, then added casually, "Oh, and if you have time, you might want to check in on the North Quadrant families. I've been hearing their air quality is particularly poor." The vague unease that had been building in Elena's chest solidified into genuine concern as she inspected the northern quadrant of each section. The air was noticeably thicker here, with a faint haze visible under the lights. Several children were sporting the telltale flush of low-grade hypoxia, and 3 elderly residents had been moved to the medical station with respiratory distress. "It's getting worse," confirmed Sarah Chong, the section's volunteer medical coordinator, her own voice raspy. "The filtration system in this quadrant is the oldest. We're running makeshift purifiers in the family units, but they can't keep up." Elena's comm unit buzzed urgently before she could respond. The message was brief and sent to all section leaders on the station. "Minor environmental incident in D section. Containment protocols in effect. No cause for station-wide concern." D section, where the villi, a gas-breathing species with significant influence in the consortium, maintained their luxury apartments. Elena's comm buzzed again almost immediately. This time, it was a personal message from Administrator Lorvis's office, marked as high priority. Due to emergency resource allocation requirements to address the situation in D section, all previously scheduled upgrade deliveries to H section are indefinitely postponed. Resources earmarked for said upgrades have been reallocated. Future scheduling to be determined pending resolution. No discussion, no consultation, just a unilateral decision that would leave H section's residents struggling to breathe for who knew how long. Elena stared at the message, a cold fury building in her chest. She played by their rules, filed the forms, attended the meetings, made the compromises, and with a single message, they made it clear how little any of that mattered. Her comm buzzed a third time. "Jax, I've just heard about D-section. His voice came through, tight with anger. And I'm guessing you've received the same indefinitely postponed message I just saw. Meeting at your place in an hour? Some of us want to talk options. Elena looked around at the families struggling with the fouled air, at the makeshift medical beds, at the faces showing increasing desperation. Yes, she said finally. I think it's time we talked options. The mood in Elena's small quarters was tense. Jax paced back and forth, unable to contain his energy. Dr. Thorne sat calmly in the corner, observing. For other community leaders, Sarah from medical, Hero from engineering, Malik from security, and Aisha from education completed the gathering. So what exactly is this minor environmental incident in D-section? Asked Malik, a former corporate security officer with a perpetually skeptical expression. Jack snorted. A coolant leak in their atmospheric regulation system. Mildly irritating to villi breathing sacs, completely non-toxic. But heaven forbid the precious villi experience any discomfort. How do you know that? Elena asked. I have friends in maintenance who were called up to help. They've basically commandeered every atmospheric regulator and filtration component on the station, including the ones that were supposed to be delivered to us. Hero, an older man with steady hands and a meticulous mind, shook his head. It gets worse. I've seen the allocation orders. They're not just taking the new components. They're planning to requisition parts from our existing systems for emergency repair stock. A shocked silence fell over the room. They can't do that, Sarah protested. We're already at minimum functionality. They can, and they will, Elena said quietly. Unless we stop them. All eyes turned to her. I thought you were the queen of plain nice, Jack said, though there was no mockery in his tone now. Only curiosity. I believe in choosing our battles, Elena replied. And I believe this is a battle we can't afford to lose. She looked around the room. So options. Real ones. Work stoppage, Jack suggested immediately. We withdraw all non-essential services. No maintenance beyond emergency life support. No waste processing. No cargo management. They bring in security forces, Malik countered. Probably Torlian mercenaries. Wouldn't be pretty. What about a more targeted approach? Hero suggested. We control key systems they don't fully understand. We could introduce inefficiencies, not enough to endanger the station, but enough to make them reconsider the value of keeping us happy. Sabotage by any other name, Dr. Thorne murmured. A dangerous game. What about going above the administrator, suggested Aisha, who had been quiet until now. Appeal directly to the consortium council? Surely there are regulations about minimum living conditions. Appeals take months to process, and the consortium backs its administrators almost without exception, Elena said. We don't have months. Not with the way things are deteriorating. Then what's your suggestion? Jax challenged. Elena took a deep breath. We need to secure our own resources. If they won't provide the components we need, we find another way to get them. She turned to Hero. How much of our current system could we salvage and rebuild with what we already have access to? The engineer considered. With some creative repurposing, maybe 30%. But we'd need specialized components for the rest. And those components exist where in the station? Elena pressed. A slow realization spread through the room. You're talking about taking what we need, Malik said flatly. From storage or from other sections? I'm talking about survival, Elena corrected. They've made it clear our needs are at the bottom of their priority list. I'm not suggesting violence or wholesale theft, just targeted acquisition of critical components that we've already been promised. The room erupted in debate. Concerns about security responses, potential backlash against the community, diplomatic ramifications. Dr. Thorne remained silent throughout, watching Elena with thoughtful eyes. Finally, Jax cut through the noise. I could get a team together. Small, skilled, discreet. We know the maintenance tunnels better than anyone. We can access the storage facilities where the new components are being held before they're redirected to D-section. And if you're caught? Sarah asked quietly. Then we claim we were performing routine maintenance and got lost. Jax replied with a hint of his usual cockiness. Wouldn't be the first time humans have played dumb to get out of trouble. The discussion continued, Details hammered out, contingencies planned. Eventually, a rough plan emerged. Jax would lead a small team to acquire key components. Hero would coordinate their installation using a skeleton crew of trusted engineers. Malik would develop a cover story and prepare security countermeasures if needed. As the meeting broke up, Dr. Thorne finally stood, approaching Elena. A significant change in strategy, he observed quietly. One that crosses certain lines. They crossed the line first, Elena replied. I've tried it their way for years. Where has it gotten us? Struggling to breathe while they redirect our resources on a whim. She looked the old scientist in the eye. Tell me I'm wrong. He shook his head slowly. No, you're not wrong. But consider this. Once you take this step, there's no going back. The Cathar will not view this as humans standing up for themselves. They'll see it as confirmation of their worst fears about Deathworlders. Unpredictable. Dangerous. He paused. Make sure you're prepared for what comes after. Elena felt the weight of his words settle on her shoulders, joining the already substantial burden of leadership. I'm open to alternatives, Doctor. I didn't say I had one, he replied with a sad smile. Sometimes there are no good choices, only necessary ones. He patted her shoulder. I'll help however I can. My research team may have some insights on bypassing security systems without leaving traces. 2 days later, in the dim light of Apex Station's night cycle, Jax and a small team of 4 made their way through the rarely used maintenance tunnels that threaded throughout the station's infrastructure. They moved with the quiet efficiency of people accustomed to working in dangerous environments, communicating with hand signals and the occasional subvocal message through their secure comms. Elena monitored their progress from her quarters, a makeshift command center established with Hero's technical assistance. Dr. Thorne had provided them with algorithms that helped mask their heat signatures from standard security scans, a fortunate byproduct of my xenobiology research, he claimed with an innocence that fooled no one. Approaching Target's storage facility, Jax's voice came through softly on the comm. Security presence as expected. 2 Cathar guards, standard rotation. Remember, minimal interaction, Elena instructed. Get in, get the priority components, get out. Nothing that can't be carried by the team. Copy that. A pause. Beginning access sequence now. Elena held her breath as Hero's bypass code was deployed against the storage facility security system. A tense 30 seconds passed. We're in, Jax whispered finally, proceeding to locate target components. The next 15 minutes were agonizingly slow, broken only by occasional status updates as the team located and secured the atmospheric regulators, filtration units, and control systems they desperately needed. Everything was proceeding according to plan, until it wasn't. Alert! Malik's voice cut in suddenly from his position monitoring station security channels. Unscheduled maintenance drone deployment in your sector. Pattern suggests standard sweep, not targeted search, but it's heading in your direction. How long do we have? Jax asked, tension evident in his voice. 3 minutes, maybe 4, Malik replied. Can you expedite? Negative. We've secured approximately 60% of critical components. Need at least another 5 minutes. Elena made a split-second decision. Hero, can you create a distraction? Something to draw the drone away without raising general alarms. Working on it, the engineer replied. His fingers flew over his portable terminal. There's a coolant circulation system 1 section over. If I trigger a minor fluctuation warning, the drone should divert to investigate. Do it, Elena ordered. Another tense minute passed. Fluctuation initiated, Hero confirmed. Drone is, yes, changing course to investigate. That buys you another 6 minutes, Jax. Make them count. The team worked frantically, securing the remaining critical components. Just as they were preparing to exit, Elena's screen flashed with an incoming station-wide alert. All section representatives, attention. This is Administrator Lorvis. A station systems anomaly has been detected originating in Maintenance Sector 47B, adjacent to H section. As a precautionary measure, all access points between maintenance tunnels and residential sections are being temporarily sealed for security scanning. Normal access will resume after investigation. This is a routine precaution only. Station security appreciates your cooperation. Elena felt ice form in her stomach. Jax, you need to move. Now, they're sealing the tunnels. Already moving, he confirmed his breathing heavy. Alternative exit Route Delta in progress. Route Delta would take them through a rarely used emergency access point near the outer hull. A longer route, but one less likely to be immediately sealed. Malik, status on tunnel sealing? Elena demanded. Inner ring seals already active. Outer ring, where Jax is headed. Initiating in approximately 3 minutes. We'll make it, Jax insisted through labored breathing. Just keep that exit point open for us. Hero's hands were already moving across his terminal. I can delay the seal on that specific exit by triggering a verification loop in the safety protocol. It won't hold for long, though. The minutes that followed were among the longest of Elena's life. She watched the dots representing Jax's team move through the tunnel system on her display, racing against the spreading network of sealed access points. Approaching exit now, Jax reported. Is it still open? For the moment, Hero confirmed. But hurry, the system is fighting my override. We see it. Almost there. The communication cut out briefly, a heart-stopping moment, before returning with the sound of heavy breathing and metallic clanging. We're through, Jax confirmed finally. All team members accounted for. All priority components secured. Elena let out the breath she'd been holding, exchanging relieved glances with Hero and Malik. Get to the rendezvous point, she instructed. We'll begin installation immediately. The team had barely made it back to H section with their acquired components when the repercussions began. A squad of station security officers, a mix of Kthar and Torlian mercenaries, arrived at the main entry point to H section, demanding access for a routine inspection. Elena met them at the boundary, maintaining a calm facade despite the tension running through her. Of course, officers, she said smoothly, though I'm curious about the timing. We weren't notified of any scheduled inspections. The lead Kthar officer's mandibles clicked in what Elena recognized as irritation. The notification requirements are waived during security incidents. Representative Rostova. I'm sure you're aware of the irregular activity detected in the maintenance tunnels adjacent to your section. I received a station-wide alert. Yes, Elena acknowledged, though I fail to see how that connects to an inspection of H section. The anomalous access patterns originated near your section and terminated near your section, the officer stated flatly. We're simply following protocol. Understand, Elena nodded. Please proceed. We have nothing to hide. Though I would ask that you limit disruption to our medical facility, we have several patients with respiratory distress due to our ongoing environmental challenges. The mention of environmental issues earned her a cold stare from the Kthar officer, but he gave a curt nod. Noted, we will be efficient. The inspection lasted hours. Security officers methodically searched common areas, randomly selected personal quarters, and storage facilities. Elena shadowed them throughout, both to ensure they didn't overstep and to keep worried residents calm. They found nothing, of course. Jax and Hero had immediately moved the acquired components to a series of hiding places throughout H section, dispersing them among legitimate repair supplies and inside modified wall panels. By the time the security forces left, looking frustrated but unable to justify further intrusion, Hero's engineering team had already begun the secret installation process. Over the next few days, a small miracle unfolded in H section. Working in rotation around the clock, engineers installed the new filtration systems and atmospheric regulators. They worked in small teams behind sealed doors during routine maintenance periods that wouldn't attract attention. The components had to be integrated carefully into the existing patchwork system without triggering automated reports to central station monitoring. The effects were gradual but unmistakable. The air grew cleaner. The haze dissipated. The number of respiratory complaints began to drop. Residents noticed the difference but were careful not to comment openly, understanding the need for discretion. A silent solidarity formed, the shared secret of a community that had taken its survival into its own hands. 1 week after the heist, Elena sat with Dr. Thorne in his laboratory, reviewing the health metrics. Remarkable improvement, the old scientist noted, examining Sarah's latest report. Respiratory incidents down 47% already. Impressive work. Jax and his team took the risk. Heroes engineers did the work, Elena said. I just made the call. The hardest part, Dr. Thorne observed. And it paid off. He paused. Though we should remain vigilant. The Kthar aren't fools. They may suspect what happened, even without proof. Let them suspect, Elena replied with newfound resolve. As long as they can't prove anything, there's little they can do without revealing their own negligence. Perhaps. The doctor didn't look entirely convinced. I hope you're right. Elena's comm unit chimed with an incoming message. As she read it, her expression darkened. What is it? Thorne asked. A summons from Administrator Lorvis. Apparently, there have been unauthorized modifications to H-Section's environmental systems, creating inconsistencies in station resource monitoring. I'm to report to Administrative immediately. They suspect, Dr. Thorne confirmed. But suspicion isn't proof. Elena stood, straightening her jacket. Then I'd better go give them a lesson in plausible deniability. Administrator Lorvis was not alone when Elena arrived. Two other Kthar officials flanked him, their postures radiating disapproval. A hollow projection of H-Section's environmental system schematics hover between them, certain areas highlighted in pulsing red. Representative Rostova, Lorvis began without preamble. Our monitoring systems have detected unauthorized modifications to your section's environmental control systems. Systems that are station property and under consortium jurisdiction. Elena maintained a neutral expression. Administrator, with all due respect, my engineers have been performing emergency maintenance on our failing systems for months. Given the indefinite postponement of our scheduled upgrades, they've had to implement creative solutions to keep our residents breathing. These are not creative solutions, one of the other Kthar interjected, mandibles clicking rapidly. These are Level 4 restricted components that were requisitioned for dissection. Components that mysteriously disappeared from secure storage. That is unfortunate, Elena replied calmly. However, I can assure you that H-Section obtained all its replacement parts through proper channels. We maintain detailed records of all maintenance activities. A lie, but one they couldn't disprove without admitting to their own selective monitoring of human activities. Your records are irrelevant, Lorvis stated. These components, he gestured to the highlighted areas, are not available through general requisition. Their presence in your systems constitutes evidence of theft and unauthorized appropriation of station resources. Elena held his gaze steadily. Are you formally accusing H-Section residents of theft, Administrator? Because that's a serious charge that would require formal investigation, evidence submission, and a hearing before the consortium judicial representative. She allowed a small pause. It would also require explaining why critical life support components promised to H-Section were unilaterally diverted elsewhere without proper consultation, in violation of Station Charter Section 47, Paragraph 9, regarding equitable resource allocation. The third Kthar shifted uncomfortably. Administrator Lorvis's compound eyes remained fixed on Elena, his antennae quivering slightly, a sign of agitation. We are not making formal accusations at this time, he said finally, merely noting a serious regulatory inconsistency that requires resolution. Understand, Elena nodded. And I'm sure we can reach a resolution that avoids unnecessary complications for all parties. She leaned forward slightly. My suggestion would be a retroactive approval of the current system configuration, coupled with a formal allocation of the remaining components needed to complete H-Section's long overdue upgrades. It was bold, essentially asking them to legitimize what she couldn't quite deny, but it also offered a way out that wouldn't require the Kthar to admit their own failings or pursue an investigation they couldn't be certain of winning. The Kthar officials conferred briefly in their own clicking language before Lorvis turned back to her. Your suggestion has practical merit, he acknowledged reluctantly. A retroactive system approval can be processed. The remaining component allocation will require review, but may be expedited given the unusual circumstances. It wasn't full capitulation, but it was close enough. Elena suppressed the urge to smile. Thank you, Administrator. H section appreciates your understanding and flexibility. As she left the administrative sector, Elena couldn't help feeling a moment of triumph. They'd pushed back, carefully, strategically, and succeeded. Perhaps this marked a turning point in human consortium relations on Apex. She could not have known how prophetic that thought would prove to be, nor how dramatically that turning point would arrive. 3 days later, the station's alert system activated during the middle of the sleep cycle. The message was terse and uninformative. Station-wide technical anomaly detected. Non-essential systems may experience temporary disruption. Technicians are responding. No immediate action required. By morning, however, the situation had clearly escalated. Communication systems were glitching, automated doors opening and closing randomly, environmental controls fluctuating in various sections. The station's central computer network was displaying increasingly erratic behavior. Elena was awakened by an urgent call from Malik. "You need to see this," he said without preamble. Central Hub, main information terminal. When she arrived, a small crowd had gathered. The station's main information display, normally showing transit schedules, announcements, and resource allocation updates, was flickering between its normal content and strange, seemingly random patterns of code. Occasionally, entire systems would briefly go offline before rebooting. "What am I looking at?" Elena asked quietly. "They're calling it corrosion code," Malik replied in a low voice. "Some kind of self-replicating virus in the station's central systems. Started in the administrative networks and is spreading through connected systems." "How bad?" "Bad and getting worse. For what I'm hearing, it's adaptive, learning from each system it infects, becoming more sophisticated. Standard countermeasures aren't working. The Kthar tech specialists are frantic." As if to emphasize his point, the lights in the central hub flickered dramatically before stabilizing at half power. A moment later, an announcement echoed through the station in Administrator Lorvis's voice, though notably lacking his usual composure. "Attention, all station residents. Apex Station is experiencing significant technical difficulties due to a malicious code infiltration. Non-essential movement throughout the station is restricted until further notice. All section representatives report to Central Administration immediately." This is not a drill. The Central Administration Hall was in chaos when Elena arrived. Representatives from every section of the station were gathered, their various physiologies displaying species-specific signs of agitation. The Kthar officials moved rapidly between holographic displays, their movements jerky with stress, a stark contrast to their usual measured precision. Administrator Lorvis called the meeting to order, his mandibles clicking irregularly. "We face an unprecedented situation," he began without ceremony. "A sophisticated artificial intelligence virus has infiltrated our central systems. It appears to have been dormant for some time before activating approximately 7 hours ago. Its origin is currently unknown, though we suspect external terrorist elements." Elena listened carefully as Lorvis outlined the situation. The virus, officially designated corrosion code, was systematically compromising critical station systems. Life support remained stable for now, but navigation, communications, data storage, and automated security were all showing signs of degradation. Most concerning was the virus's apparent ability to adapt to countermeasures, seemingly learning from each failed attempt to contain it. "Our technical specialists are implementing emergency protocols," Lorvis continued, "but progress has been limited. We have isolated certain critical systems by physically disconnecting them from the main network, but this is a temporary measure at best." A Villi representative raised a limb appendage. "What of external communications? Can we request emergency assistance from the nearest consortium outpost?" "Long-range communications have been compromised," Lorvis replied, his tone grim. "Short-range remains functional but inadequate to reach help. We are effectively isolated until we resolve this internally." As the meeting continued, Elena noticed something curious. While reports from most sections described cascading failures and system malfunctions, H-section's networks seem to be experiencing significantly less disruption. They're cobbled-together systems, running on outdated protocols and barely connected to the station's main network, appear to have inadvertently created a buffer against the virus's spread. When she returned to H-section, Elena immediately convened an emergency meeting with her core team. "We're in a unique position," she explained, reviewing what she'd learned. "Our systems are partially insulated from this thing due to our unconventional network architecture." Jax nodded. "Makes sense. We're running half a dozen different protocol generations cobbled together, probably confusing the hell out of any virus designed for modern systems." Dr. Thorne, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "May I see the code samples they shared with the representatives?" Elena transferred the data to his tablet. The old scientist studied it intently, his expression growing increasingly focused. "Fascinating," he murmured. "This isn't just attacking systems randomly. It's specifically targeting pattern-based security protocols and learning from them." He looked up, his eyes bright with sudden recognition. "The mathematics here, they're remarkably similar to what my research team has been studying. This virus operates on principles of adapting to ordered systems by introducing calculated chaos." "In normal human language, Doctor?" Jax prompted. "It's like, imagine a lock that constantly changes its mechanism. This virus doesn't try to find the right key. It disrupts the lock's ability to change consistently." He turned to Elena. "And if that's true, then perhaps the inverse principle could create a solution. You're saying we could fight chaos with chaos?" Elena asked. "Not exactly. More like fighting adaptive chaos with a specific pattern of chaos that disrupts its ability to adapt. A chaos signal, if you will." Dr. Thorne looked animated now, more energetic than Elena had seen him in years. "My research team has been developing mathematical models that might be applicable. It would require access to the station's main broadcast system to distribute the countermeasure throughout the infected network." "So, you're suggesting we create some kind of chaos vaccine?" Jax asked, leaning forward with interest. "Precisely," Dr. Thorne confirmed. "But developing it would require intensive computational resources, and deploying it would mean accessing systems at the heart of the Cthar administrative sector, systems humans are explicitly forbidden from touching." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. "So our options are what?" Malik finally asked. "Sit back and watch the station systems fail, potentially killing everyone on board? Or commit what the Cthar would consider a major security breach in an attempt to save everyone?" "There's another factor to consider," Hero added quietly. "If this works, it changes everything about our position here. The Cthar and the rest of the consortium would be forced to acknowledge that humans solved a problem their best specialists couldn't crack." Elena felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. The potential risks were enormous. If they failed, or if their actions were interpreted as aggression rather than assistance, the consequences for H-section could be severe. But the alternative was to do nothing while the station's systems continued to degrade, potentially leading to catastrophic failure. "Dr. Thorne," she said finally, "how confident are you that this approach could work?" The old scientist considered carefully before answering. "The theoretical foundation is sound. With my research team's assistance, I believe we could develop an effective countermeasure. But I cannot offer certainties with something this complex." Elena nodded, making her decision. "Begin development immediately. Use whatever resources we have. Jax, I need you to assemble a team, the best people you have for infiltration and technical implementation. Malik, work on a security assessment of the broadcast center. We need to know exactly what we're walking into." She stood, looking around at their concerned faces. "We played by their rules for years, and where has it gotten us? Treated as second-class citizens, our basic needs ignored or postponed indefinitely. Now we have a chance to do more than just survive. We have a chance to prove our worth beyond doubt." Her voice hardened with resolve. "We've been nice long enough. It's time to save this station our way." The next 12 hours were a blur of frantic activity. Dr. Thorne and his small research team worked ceaselessly, developing and testing their chaos signal, using mathematical models so complex that Elena couldn't begin to understand them. Jax assembled a strike team of 6, each chosen for specific skills that would be needed for their infiltration. Malik and his security personnel devised routes through the increasingly unstable station that would avoid detection. Throughout it all, conditions on Apex continued to deteriorate. Life support systems began showing the first signs of infection. Artificial gravity fluctuated in several sections. Emergency lighting failed in others. The Cathar administration issued increasingly desperate directives, implementing lockdowns and system isolations that did little to slow the virus's spread. In H Section's makeshift laboratory, Dr. Thorne finally looked up from his terminal, exhaustion evident in his eyes, but satisfaction in his smile. "It's ready," he announced. "As ready as it can be without full testing, at any rate." He handed Elena a small data crystal. "This contains the chaos signal algorithm. When uploaded to the central broadcast system and activated, it should propagate throughout the infected network, disrupting the virus's adaptive capabilities and allowing normal system functions to reassert themselves." "Should?" Elena questioned, turning the crystal in her hand. "In theory," Dr. Thorne admitted. "We've run every simulation possible with our limited resources. The mathematics are sound. But ultimately, this is uncharted territory." Elena nodded, slipping the crystal into a secure pocket. "It's more than anyone else has managed." She turned to Jax. "Is your team ready?" "As ready as we'll ever be," he confirmed. "The route to the broadcast center is mapped, with 3 contingency paths if we encounter problems. We've got portable scramblers to handle the automated security systems that are still functioning." "And if you encounter living security?" Elena asked directly. Jax's expression hardened. "Non-lethal measures only. Stun charges and sedative dispensers. We're going to save lives, not take them." "Good." Elena looked around at her team. "This goes against everything we've been told about our place here. Once we start, there's no turning back. The best outcome is that we succeed and force a renegotiation of our status. The worst." She didn't need to finish the thought. "We're with you," Malik said simply, and the others nodded in agreement. "Then let's move." The mission began during what would have been the station's night cycle, though the distinction had blurred as emergency protocols overrode normal lighting schedules. Jax's team moved through the maintenance tunnels, using the same routes they'd mapped during their earlier component acquisition. This time, however, they were headed toward the station's central hub, the administrative heart of Apex. Elena monitored their progress from a makeshift command center in Dr. Thorne's lab, alongside the scientist himself and Hero, who maintained communications through the increasingly unstable network. Approaching Junction 7, Jax's voice came through, slightly distorted by interference. "Security presence minimal. They're too busy dealing with system failures." Proceeding to sub-level access point, Elena watched the schematics on Hero's display, tension building in her chest. The team's markers moved steadily toward the central hub, navigating around lockdown points and security checkpoints. "So far, so good." Warning, Malik's voice cut in from his position coordinating security intelligence. "Our emergency protocols just shifted. They're implementing physical guards at all critical system access points, including the broadcast center." Elena cursed under her breath. "Jax, did you copy that?" "Affirmative," came the tense reply. "We can see them now. 2 Cathar security officers and what looks like a Torlian mercenary at the main access. Too many for a quiet approach. Can you use one of your alternate routes?" Elena asked. "Checking. The maintenance shaft access is sealed with a physical lock. Virus precaution, probably. The ventilation system might work, but it's tight even for us." One moment. The minutes stretched painfully as Jax assessed their options. Finally, his voice returned. "We have a route. Maintenance robot service channel. It'll be tight, and we'll have to disable the automated service alerts, but it should get us in behind their position. Malik, can you trigger a diversion on sub-level 3? Something to draw attention, but not catastrophic." "On it," Malik confirmed. Moments later, Alarms began blaring in a distant section of the station. Environmental alert triggered in visitor quarters. Non-critical, but should pull resources. Elena held her breath as Jax's team made their move, squeezing through the narrow service channel designed for maintenance drones rather than humanoid bodies. Their position markers inched slowly toward the broadcast center. "We're in," Jax whispered finally. Broadcast center secured. Only one technician present, sedated and secured comfortably. He'll wake up with a headache, but nothing worse. "Good work," Elena acknowledged. "Begin the upload sequence. Dr. Thorne will guide you through the activation process." As Thorne began relaying technical instructions to Jax's team, a priority alert flashed on Elena's comm unit. Administrator Lorvis was requesting an immediate emergency meeting of all section representatives. Their activities had not gone unnoticed. "Continue with the plan," Elena instructed. "I'll handle Lorvis and buy you whatever time I can." The Central Administration Chamber was in even greater disarray than before. Representatives argued amongst themselves, some demanding evacuation procedures be initiated, others insisting on more aggressive countermeasures against the virus. Administrator Lorvis stood at the center, his normally immaculate appearance now disheveled, antennae quivering with stress. "Representatives," he called out, mandibles clicking rapidly. "We have detected unauthorized access to critical systems from multiple points within the station. It appears the virus infection may be assisted by physical infiltration. Security forces are responding, but all sections must implement immediate lockdown protocols." Elena kept her expression neutral as murmurs of alarm spread through the gathered representatives. A Villi representative raised appendages in distress. "Are you suggesting sabotage? By whom? For what purpose?" "Evidence is still being gathered," Lorvis replied carefully. "But initial indications suggest the infiltrations originated from H section." All eyes turned to Elena. She felt a momentary surge of panic, but pushed it aside. Now was the time for boldness, not retreat. "Administrator," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber, "before you make accusations, perhaps you should consider why H section systems have shown greater resilience to this virus than any other section of the station. My technical specialists have been analyzing this threat since it first appeared, and they've developed insights your own experts seem to have missed." Lorvis's compound eyes fixed on her with cold intensity. "What exactly are you claiming, Representative Rostova?" "I'm claiming that while your specialists have been implementing ineffective countermeasures, mine have been developing an actual solution." She stepped forward. "And yes, they are attempting to implement it now, because your bureaucracy would waste precious hours debating while systems continue to fail." A stunned silence fell over the chamber. "This is outrageous," a Kthar official sputtered. "Unauthorized access to central systems is a serious security breach, regardless of intent. More serious than the complete failure of life support systems," Elena challenged. "More serious than the potential loss of the entire station? My people are risking their lives to save everyone on this station, including those who have consistently treated them as inferior." Her comm unit vibrated against her wrist, Jax's signal that they were ready to activate the chaos signal. She needed to buy just a few more minutes. "Administrator Lorvis," she continued, "you can send your security forces to stop my team if you wish. But before you do, ask yourself this. What happens if they succeed where your specialists have failed? What happens if Deathworlders save Apex Station when a mighty consortium could not?" The implied challenge, to both his authority and to Kthar pride, had its intended effect. Lorvis hesitated, compound eyes shifting between his advisors. "You claim your people have developed a countermeasure?" he asked finally. "Based on what expertise?" "Based on mathematical models of chaos theory that your specialists haven't considered," Elena replied. "My team is prepared to upload and activate the countermeasure immediately. You can either allow this to proceed, potentially saving the station, or you can intervene and guarantee failure." The lights in the chamber flickered ominously, as if emphasizing her point. Environmental systems audibly struggled, the air processors whining with strain. Lorvis's mandibles clicked rapidly as he conferred with his advisors in their clicking language. Finally, he turned back to Elena. "You have one attempt," he stated coldly. "If your intervention causes further damage to station systems, the consequences for H section will be severe." Elena nodded, then spoke in her comm unit. "Jax, initiate the sequence." Now, in the broadcast center, Jax's team finalized their preparations. The chaos signal algorithm was uploaded to the station's central distribution system, ready for activation. But there was a problem. The power output is insufficient. Hero's voice came through their comms. "The virus has compromised too many power regulation systems. The signal won't propagate fully with current energy levels. Can we boost it somehow?" Jax asked, looking around the broadcast center frantically. "You need a massive power surge," Hero replied. "Something to override the safety limiters and push maximum output through the broadcast array. But that kind of surge would likely damage the array itself, maybe permanently." Jax made a split-second decision. "What if we reroute power from our portable equipment? The emergency power cells we brought for the scramblers." "That might work," Hero acknowledged. "But those cells aren't designed for this kind of application. The energy transfer would be unstable, dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Jax pressed. "As an electrical discharge, extreme heat, possible detonation," Hero said bluntly. "Anyone handling the connection would be at serious risk." Jax looked at his team, then back at the broadcast controls. "I'll do it myself. Everyone else, clear the room." Despite protests, he insisted, and the team reluctantly withdrew to a safe distance. Alone in the broadcast center, Jax began the delicate process of connecting the emergency power cells to the broadcast system's input terminals. His hands moved with the practiced precision of someone who had spent his life working with dangerous mechanical systems. But even he couldn't fully suppress their slight trembling. "Connections complete," he reported, preparing to initiate power transfer and signal broadcast simultaneously. In the administration chamber, Elena watched as the main display monitors flickered erratically. Around her, the assembled representatives held their breath. "Signal activation in 3, 2, came Jax's voice. A blinding surge of energy erupted from the broadcast center, visible through windows as a pulse of blue-white light that spread through the station's power conduits. Every screen, every terminal, every light on Apex Station flickered wildly for several seconds. Then, complete darkness. For a heart-stopping moment, Elena feared they had failed catastrophically. Then, one by one, systems began to reactivate. Lights returned at low power. Environmental systems hummed back to life. Display screens reset, showing normal operational interfaces rather than the corrupted patterns of the virus. "Status report," Administrator Lorvis demanded, his voice tight with tension. A Kthar technician worked rapidly at a terminal. "Virus signature, not detected. Repeating scan, still not detected. Primary systems rebooting successfully. Secondary systems initializing. Tertiary networks coming online." The technician looked up, mandibles quivering with what might have been disbelief. "The virus appears to be neutralized, Administrator." A collective exhalation seemed to pass through the chamber. Relief, disbelief, and confusion mingled in the reactions of the various representatives. Elena had only one concern. "Jax," she said into her comm unit. "Report. Are you okay?" The silence that followed was agonizing. Then, finally, a pained but triumphant voice responded. "Still here. Bit crispy around the edges. But worked, Elena." The signal went through. "Medical team to the broadcast center," Elena demanded immediately, not caring that she was giving orders in front of the consortium leadership. Now, in the days that followed, Apex Station gradually returned to normal operations. Systems were thoroughly checked and secured, backup data restored, damage repaired. But beneath the surface of these technical recoveries, a profound shift had occurred in the station's power dynamics. Jax recovered in H Section's medical facility, being treated for electrical burns and exhaustion, but expected to make a full recovery. He had become something of a hero, not just among humans, but among many other species who had heard of his role in saving the station. Dr. Thorne and his research team found themselves suddenly in demand. Their expertise, sought by the very Cthar specialists who had previously dismissed human scientific contributions as primitive or derivative. And Elena found herself in an entirely new position as she once again stood before Administrator Lorvis, this time with Jax, his hands still bandaged, and Dr. Thorne flanking her. But unlike her previous meetings in this office, this time she had not been summoned. She had requested the meeting, and her request had been granted with surprising promptness. Lorvis regarded them with an unreadable expression, his compound eyes reflecting the artificial light of his office. Representative Rostova, he began formally, the consortium administration acknowledges the significant contribution of H section in resolving the recent crisis. A formal commendation has been entered into station records. A commendation is appreciated, Elena replied evenly, but insufficient. We're here to discuss substantive changes to H section's status within Apex Station. If Lorvis was surprised by her directness, he didn't show it. What specifically do you propose? Elena laid out their demands without hesitation. First, complete autonomy over H section's environmental and security systems, with guaranteed resource allocations based on population needs rather than discretionary assignment. Second, formal representation on the Station Administrative Council with full voting rights, not merely observer status. Third, a complete upgrade of H section facilities to meet the standards of other residential sections, to be completed within 60 days. Fourth, official recognition of human technical and security service companies, with fair consideration for station-wide contracts. Fifth, a formal acknowledgement of past discriminatory practices against human residents and a commitment to equitable treatment moving forward. Lorvis's antennae twitched, the Cthar equivalent of raised eyebrows. These are substantial demands. They are reasonable requests, Elena corrected firmly, in light of both recent events and years of systemic marginalization. We saved this station when conventional approaches failed. We did so despite being consistently denied resources, representation, and respect. She leaned forward slightly. We're no longer asking, Administrator. We're negotiating. The implication was clear. Humans had proven both their value and their capability. They had also demonstrated a willingness to act outside established channels when necessary for survival. The balance of power had shifted. Lorvis conferred briefly with his advisors before responding. Certain concessions can be made immediately. Others will require review by the full Consortium Council. His mandibles clicked in what Elena had learned to recognize as a sign of resignation. But I am authorized to begin preliminary implementation of upgraded environmental systems and to initiate the process for council representation. It wasn't complete capitulation, but it was a start, and more than humans had achieved in all their years on Apex Station. Elena nodded, maintaining her composure despite the surge of triumph she felt. We'll begin drafting the specific implementation details immediately, she said, and we expect regular progress updates. As they left the administrative sector, Jax couldn't contain his grin despite his injuries. Did you see his face? Well, not his face exactly, but those twitchy antennae. He looked like someone had just recalibrated his reality. Someone did, Dr. Thorne observed mildly. Several someones, in fact. He placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. You realized what I've been trying to tell you for years. Sometimes the only language power understands is power. What happens now? Jax asked as they entered the transit pod back to H section. They won't just accept this new arrangement without pushing back, will they? Of course not, Elena acknowledged. There will be resistance, bureaucratic obstacles, attempts to water down what we've won. That's why we need to solidify our position quickly, implement the changes we can control directly, build alliances with other marginalized sections, document everything. The transit pod doors opened to H section, where news of their successful negotiation had already spread. A small crowd had gathered, faces hopeful and proud. Elena saw something there she hadn't seen in years. Not just relief or gratitude, but dignity. The dignity of people who had finally stood up for themselves and been acknowledged. 3 months later, Apex Station had transformed in ways both visible and subtle. Each section, no longer unofficially named, but formally designated Humanity Quarter in station directories, had undergone dramatic improvements. New environmental systems hummed efficiently, providing clean air and optimal temperature regulation. Housing units have been expanded and upgraded. The narrow, crowded corridors have been widened and properly illuminated. More importantly, humans now sat on the station administrative council. Their technical expertise was sought rather than merely exploited. Other species that had previously avoided association with Deathworlders now openly formed business partnerships and social connections. Not everyone was pleased with these changes, of course. Certain conservative Cthar factions protested what they viewed as preferential treatment and security risks. Some commercial interests that had profited from human marginalization lobbied against the new arrangements. But they found themselves increasingly isolated as the practical benefits of human integration became apparent throughout the station. Elena stood at the same viewport, where she had once gazed at the Cthar district with resignation, now looking out with satisfaction at the changed landscape of Apex. Jax joined her, his hands healed but bearing the faint tracery of scars that he wore as badges of honor. "Not bad for a bunch of Deathworlders," he remarked. Elena smiled. "We still have work to do. The formal Consortium Council review is next month. Some of the older Cthar houses are still resistant. And we need to be careful not to isolate ourselves now that we have a seat at the table." Always the pragmatist, Jax teased, but his tone was affectionate rather than confrontational. The crisis had matured him, tempered his impulsiveness with a new appreciation for strategy. "Someone has to be," she replied. "But yes, we've come a long way." They turned as Dr. Thorne approached, accompanied by a small group that included both humans and representatives from 3 other species, a research collaboration that would have been unthinkable months earlier. "Ah, there you are," the old scientist called. "Come see what we've been working on. An adaptation of our chaos signal mathematics for cross-species translation algorithms. Fascinating implications." As they followed him toward the new research center, they passed a recently installed plaque at the entrance to Humanity Quarter. It bore a simple inscription that had become something of a motto, not just for humans, but for other formerly marginalized groups on the station. Apex Station remembers the day the Deathworlders stopped being nice. It wasn't just a commemoration of a single crisis averted. It was a reminder that sometimes standing up for oneself wasn't just a matter of dignity. It was a matter of survival. And that respect, once earned, could transform an entire world. Or, at least, an entire station. For the humans of Apex, it marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. They had proven themselves not just useful, but essential. Not just tolerated, but valued. And they had done it not by abandoning their humanity, but by embracing it. Their adaptability, their ingenuity, their willingness to take risks that others wouldn't consider. As Elena looked around at what they had built, she felt a quiet pride. They had done more than survive on Apex Station. They had changed it irreversibly for the better. And every civilization on the station remembered exactly when and how that change had begun.